For millions of years, human birth was one of the most dangerous moments in life. Unlike almost every other animal, human mothers often couldn't do it alone. A baby could get stuck, a cord could tighten. One mistake could mean death for both mother and child. And then, somewhere in the deep past, one woman did something extraordinary. She helped another give birth. That simple act may have changed the future of our entire species. So who was the first midwife? And why might she be one of the most important humans who ever lived? You were not meant to be born alone. No other animal can say that. A zebra slides into the world and stands within the hour, wet and blinking, already able to flee from lions before the sun has shifted in the sky. A newborn kitten finds its mother by smell alone, but you arrived early, helpless, and turned the wrong way, needing hands that were not your own. You probably imagine that birth has always looked roughly the same. A mother, a struggle, a cry, a new person in the world. Familiar, ancient, unchanging. But the real answer is far stranger. Somewhere deep in your family tree, on a day no one wrote down, a human being did something no creature had ever done before. She reached toward another and helped her finish the act of being born. That single gesture may be one of the quiet hinges on which your whole species turns. So what did the first midwife actually do? To see it, you first have to see a problem. A problem folded into the shape of your own body. Stand a creature up on two legs, and its pelvis has to change. It narrows, it tilts. It becomes a sturdy bowl, strong enough to carry the weight of the body above without letting everything inside spill toward the ground. This is one of the prices of walking upright, and your ancestors began paying it millions of years ago. But a second pressure pulled in the opposite direction: the brain. Across hundreds of thousands of generations, the human brain swelled until a newborn's head grew enormous compared to the body carrying it. A widening head, a narrowing canal. Two forces locked against each other, meeting at the most dangerous doorway in all of nature. Anthropologists have a name for this collision. They call it the obstetric dilemma. For a long time, it was told as a simple, brutal trade. The hips can only open so far before walking turns clumsy, so the infant has to leave before its skull grows too large to pass through. Now think about what that means in the moment of birth. A chimpanzee, one of your closest living cousins, has it far easier. Her birth canal is roomy. Her newborn slides through in a nearly straight line and emerges facing toward her, so she can reach down, draw it up to her chest, and wipe its face clean in a single motion. She does this alone. She wants to be alone. A laboring chimp will slip away from the group, find a quiet place, and the whole thing is usually over quickly and in private. Your birth is nothing like that. A human baby cannot travel in a straight line. It has to turn. The skull enters the pelvis facing one direction, then rotates partway through, threading a passage shaped like a bent and twisting tube. The biological anthropologist Wenda Trevathan spent years studying this exact sequence, and she noticed something almost everyone else had walked straight past. The human newborn usually emerges facing away from its mother. Hold on to that one fact, because it quietly changes everything. If the baby faces away, a mother who reaches down to pull it up risks bending its spine and neck backward, against the way they are built to curve. She cannot easily lift it to her chest. She cannot easily see its face, clear its mouth, or unwind a cord wrapped around its throat. The very instinct that serves a chimpanzee so beautifully becomes dangerous in a human being. Trevathan argued that this is the deep reason humans are the only primate for whom birth so often becomes a shared event. Not culture, not custom, biology itself. Working with the anthropologist Karen Rosenberg of the University of Delaware, she proposed that natural selection may have quietly favored two things at once: the instinct to seek a companion in labor, and the companions who slowly learned how to help. And here is the part that should stop you. This problem is old, far older than the giant human brain. When researchers examined the pelvis of Lucy, the famous Australopithecus afarensis skeleton who lived more than 3 million years ago, they found a birth canal that was already flattened and twisted. Robert Tague and Owen Lovejoy studied that ancient pelvis closely and concluded that her infants likely had to rotate on the way out, much as yours did. Lucy's babies had small brains. And still, Birth was already a tight, turning, awkward passage. So for millions of years, mothers in your lineage have been facing a doorway that does not open easily. For millions of years, something has been pushing them toward needing help. Picture it now. A clearing, somewhere in the deep past, long before any word like hospital or doctor existed. A young woman in labor, frightened, breathing hard. And beside her, another woman. One who has seen this before. One who has felt the same fire move through her own body. One who knows to wait, to steady, to murmur, to catch the slick newborn and turn it gently the right way and lay it against its mother's skin. That is what the first midwife did. She had no tools. She had no training, no chart, no name for what she was doing. She had attention, memory, and a steady pair of hands. And somehow that was enough to tilt the odds, just slightly, toward life. And the help mattered far more than you might guess. A baby that emerges facing away can stall with one shoulder caught against the bone. A cord can loop and tighten in the dark, unseen. A newborn can arrive utterly silent, its very first breath waiting on someone to clear its mouth and rub the warmth back into its skin. None of this asks for medicine. It asks for a second person who stays calm, who keeps watching, who somehow knows the difference between an ordinary pause and a true crisis. For almost the whole of human history, that one person was the entire distance between a beginning and an ending. Do you feel how strange this is? The very thing that makes human birth so risky may also be the thing that first taught your ancestors to gather around one another at the sharpest edge of survival. But here the story turns. For decades, the obstetric dilemma was treated as settled fact. Big brain, narrow hips, painful compromise. The end. Then, a biological anthropologist named Holly Dunsworth looked hard at the actual numbers and found that the tidy story did not quite hold. She pointed out that slightly wider hips would not really have ruined a person's ability to walk or run. The evidence simply did not show that a roomier birth canal would have made your ancestors slower or clumsier across the open land. So if the pelvis could have been wider, why was it not? Why are you still born so early, so unfinished, so impossibly soft? Dunsworth offered a different answer. She argued that birth is timed not by the width of the hips, but by the limits of the mother herself. A growing fetus is staggeringly expensive to run. At a certain point, the energy a pregnant body can supply hits a ceiling, and the only way to keep feeding that hungry, ballooning brain is to deliver the child and feed it from the outside instead. In this view, labor begins not because the baby will no longer fit, but because the mother has reached the very edge of what her body can give. It is a quieter and stranger idea. Birth as an energy crisis. The exact moment your supply could no longer meet your demand. And notice that this does not erase the midwife. It only deepens her. Whether the cause was a narrow canal or a metabolic ceiling, the result for you was identical. You were born early. You were born helpless. A foal runs on the day it is born. You could not lift your own head for months, could not feed yourself, could not even hold up the weight of your own enormous skull. Anthropologists sometimes call this secondary altriciality, the strange human condition of arriving long before you are finished. And an unfinished newborn needs far more than a single exhausted mother. It needs a circle of people. This may be the true invention hidden inside that ancient clearing, not the spear, not the fire. The willingness to gather around the most vulnerable moment a human will ever pass through, and simply to stay. And think about who stood in that circle. Not only a mate, a sister, a mother, a grandmother whose own childbearing years were long behind her and who had nothing left to do with all that hard-won experience except spend it on someone else. Some researchers believe these older women, freed from raising infants of their own, became the living memory of how to help. Every birth they had ever witnessed folded quietly into a single pair of patient hands. A human child, it turns out, was never built to be raised by two people. It was built to be raised by many, and the circle that would one day feed you, carry you, and teach you to speak first gathered, before any of that, simply to see you safely out. Rosenberg has noted that the longing for company in labor appears across nearly every human culture ever studied. Across every continent, across thousands of years, the laboring woman is almost never truly alone. Someone is there. Someone has nearly always been there. Now turn and look back at your own beginning. You were lifted into the world by hands. Someone counted your fingers. Someone watched your chest to be sure it rose and fell. Before you had a name, before you carried a single memory, you were already being tended by people who had inherited that tending from a chain of helpers reaching back beyond writing, beyond language, beyond the first mark ever scratched on a cave wall. You like to think of yourself as an individual, self-made, standing on your own 2 feet. But the very first thing that ever happened to you was that you needed someone, and someone came. That truth is older than every nation, older than every god whose name you have heard, older than the word for mother in any language still spoken on the earth. So the next time you feel that you ought to handle everything alone, that needing help is a kind of weakness, that real strength means never once reaching out your hand, remember the clearing. Remember the frightened breathing in the dark. Remember the steady hands that waited there to catch a stranger who would grow up to be someone like you. You were not meant to be born alone, and the truth is, you never once were.